Hi, class, and we are now in chapters 14 and 15. We are going to be getting a little more in depth into actually work motivation for performance, and we'll get into managing teams. This is Principles of Management, and I'm Professor Austin. And I think we have got such a great amount of information put out, but I want you to make sure that you go and get more information from our textbook. These are just mini lectures of about maybe 15 to 20 minutes long, but I want you to actually get more in depth as you go into the rest of the chapter. All right, so let's get into motivation. Motivation equals direction and intensity. So when you're motivated, you need to know what direction you're actually going to be heading in. Like, what is the prime objective? Where are you going? What is the derivative factor of you starting from point A and getting to point Z? That's your direction. And then intensity. Intensity basically is basically your effort. How intense is this going to be? So direction equals the goals. Intensity equals the effort level. Are you going to be mediocre? You'll be fine. Are you going to be full charging? Or are you going to be methodical? That is basically what's motivating you. So, what's going to motivate you? Is it going to be wealth? Is it going to be position? Is it going to be, let's say, some kind of, let's say, incentive for how about just a parking spot? So, when we're thinking about motivating our employees, we have to look at some theorists, which we're going to be covering, and find out what really motivates our employees, or how can we motivate them differently. I was 20 years in the United States Navy, and I think the biggest way I motivated my sailors was to make sure that I respected them, gave them what they needed, and make sure that they understood that I was there to be their confidant, their leader, but also, let's say, someone that they can look up to. Now, that's easily said, but some theorists got behind the scenes and said, well, let me tell you what we think, you know, as motivational theorists, because we've done a lot of research. Let's take a peek at these three. So Maslow believed in the hierarchy of need. Maslow said, you know what, if you've got these basic needs met, then your employees will be motivated. And it started with the philosophical, the safety needs, love and being loved, self-esteem or esteem, and then self-actualization. This is what Maslow believed. If you had these particular factors all working together and they're part of your motivation, then your employee will be motivated. Hertzberg thought of there's only two factors. There's a two-prone effect. He believed in two things, the motivators and the hygiene. The hygiene is the part that says if all these things are aligned, if all these things are met, if I'm going to be comfortable, my hygiene not meaning your physical body being clean. Hygiene means the things that are need to be maintained. I will be happy. And you can see those on the screen. Once of those supposedly are met, according to Hertzberg, then the motivation kicks in. Wow. And finally, McClellan, he believed in three different ways to motivate. And when you see those right there, you can dig in, go down a few layers, and see what McClellan was talking about. He was talking about need for achievement and so many other factors that you have to actually kind of dig into and figure out. All right. So the motivation process. How does a motivation process work? So, first of all, it starts with equity, goal, and expectancy. So equity, what are you going to get? Is it equal? Are we all doing the same thing, or is this one person doing more than me? Because people see that all the time when you're out there in a company. You're like, and you'll see a person come in at noon and they leave at 3, or you see a person that shows up late but they never get reprimanded. And then all the goals that are supposed to be accomplished within the day, you're accomplishing the goals yourself. So a lot of times we see that, and we say, how do we motivate our employees to where they are going to be doing the job that we expect them to do? Equity. And then expectancy. Well, what are we expecting? What are they expecting? They're expecting some kind of either monetary reward or perhaps maybe just praise. The average employee just wants to be praised for a great job. And then sometimes all they want to do, it's a bug in my office, all they want to do is make sure the goal is met. Sometimes people just have self-esteem that they feel like, wow, I got it done. I did it. But we have to understand how that works. And the key that I always say is reinforcement impacts behavior. So reinforce the fact that they've done a great job, or reinforce the fact that you need them to improve upon the job that they were doing so you can meet the end goal. And this is the process of the theories, going through all of the concepts to make sure we reach the end result. The expectancy theory is one area that talks about effort, performance, rewards. Effort, performance, and rewards. So perceived fairness, we talked about equity in the last slide. Perceived fairness and the ability to be motivated and to do more for the company. That's the expectancy theory. Expectancy from you as the supervisor and expectancy from the employee. We already shifted into chapter 15. Chapter 14 was just a simple, let's say, cause and effect or theories on how you motivate your employees. And some people believe there are some basic ways that if the needs are met, your employees will actually be motivated. But I always say, go back to a few chapters earlier. And to me, the true motivation is how you lead. It goes back to our leadership chapter. How you lead will motivate your employees. It's nice that we cover the theories. It's nice that these folks have these notions or these ideas of how things are done. But when it all comes down to it, you're the leader and you've got to motivate your employees. And with me as a faculty member, I've got to motivate my students to learn, to come to class, to pay attention, to take off the headphones or those little earbud things, because I want to make sure that in business and in finance, you're going to use the information I'm teaching you today, tomorrow, and next week. And a lot of my students are entrepreneurs. So what I'm teaching them, they really want to, let's say, grasp onto and understand. So let's talk about teamwork. A lot of companies are not individualistic. They've got groups, especially Apple, Google, Tesla, Amazon. You work in groups, especially with Amazon. You got like an assembly line, so forth. These are the manufacturer folks over here. These are the boxing folks over here. These are the distribution folks. Everyone works in teams. So team cooperation is very important. And if you get someone who's not pulling the load, you know that you're doing more than they are. And sometimes in my opinion, it creates tension. I like to say I'm getting treated equal, and that if I get to leave at 4, the other person shouldn't be leaving at 3 and getting the same pay. We talk about that in teamwork. Sharing goals and accountability. I know a lot of you have a lot of horror stories when you're students and you work in group projects and some people don't pull their load. That's a big factor. When I was at San Diego State University working on my undergrad in communication, we had a really cool project and I was excited to do it. One guy was not excited. He thought we were going to do the entire project ourselves. Again, teamwork. So we said, we'll move on without him. Let's get the work done. When it was all said and done, he still needs a grade. What do you think he did? Hey guys, dudes, yo, we've been doing so much work, but I was behind the scenes. I was supporting you guys. I haven't had a chance to interact with you too much, but how's the project going? We're like, bro, it's done. Oh, okay, cool, all right. We took your name off the project because you contributed 0 to the group project. And our professor, which was so smart, he had the individual group or peer evaluations. So we can say, I'm sorry, this guy didn't pull his weight. He did no work. We did it all. We all got the A's. He got an F. Teamwork. There's accountability. There's responsibility. Because what happens is when people expect you to do a job and you don't do the job, who else is going to be doing that job? Your coworker or your peer or your fellow student. So effective teams. Effective teams are clear goals are shared. There's strong communication. I think what I do, I probably over communicate because I'm always saying, hey, just reconfirm me, you're going to do the PowerPoint. Hey, just reconfirm me, you're going to do all the editing. I'm reconfirming you're going to be downloading, acceptable pictures for our PowerPoint. That's when I was an undergrad student. So I did a lot of communicating because no one wants to be at the end of the deadline and you found out that the person who was going to be editing was been, let's say, sick, or she was pregnant, or his wife was pregnant, or something happened where everything changed. Clear communication, clear goals. And that's important, not just in, let's say, school, but also in work. Very, very important because if you don't get the job done, you're terminated. And especially if you're probationary. If you're a probationary 3-month window to show them what you can do and you don't perform, they don't have to keep you. And in California, a lot of folks don't know we are an at-will state. We can hire you and fire you at will. The key thing is firing you at will. Most states, you have to be, let's say, retrained or you have to give them warning. We can fire you tomorrow and not tell you why. In California, that was a law passed years ago. All right, and also effective team, you have feedback and you have trust. That's student as well as companies. What is the trust level talking about? We trust you to fulfill your obligation of a team leader. You're one of the team. So what are you going to do? You're going to do your part. If you're having a problem with your part and you're struggling, that's when you go back to the communication. That's when you go back to, whoa, we need to reset these goals. I don't think I can reach some of the goals you guys, and so expecting me to do. Communication, feedback. That's going to make the process work. So team development here is important. When you're forming the team, you actually are looking at storming and norming. So forming, storming, and norming. Forming, storming, and norming. So if you are actually forming it, you're putting it together. Storming it, you are doing, let's say, brainstorming. And normally, norming, you're putting it all together. So performing is performing and adjourning, which means you started and you finished it. Adjournment, you're done with it. This is team development. Then you get into managing the team itself. Focus on the people dynamics. Do they work well together? I think it's important to understand skill sets of your employees, skill sets of your students. I had a student who really was not let's say, a public speaker. So I had this student actually maybe taking notes when we were doing some assignments, or when I was the leader of the fashion club, I was a faculty advisor to the Southwestern College Fashion Club. We had certain people who weren't really in the modeling, let's say, skill set. So we put them back in the designing, or we put them in the business, or we put them into marketing. So this goes back to focus on people dynamics. And also, do they get along with one another? And if not, think about moving people around. Because people don't overnight just love you and adore you. So you got to figure out what's the balance. Also, I just said the word balance, balance individuals and group goals. Group goals, group goals. That's a new word. And group goals. When you do that, then you have a more effective group. You get the resolution at the end of the day, the month, or whatever the period is, and you said, you know what? I'm so glad we moved a few people around. And Joe or Mike or Sarah, you guys moved around into areas that we didn't think you would be able to really develop. You killed it. So don't forget those, let's say those verbal and public, acknowledgments. People love to hear, I've done a good job. They don't need a huge pat on the back, but at least say, you know what? You stepped up. You stepped up when we would thought you weren't going to be able to step up. So again, managing teams. And then it's not a problem when you actually move people around because they're probably satisfied, happy, let's say reassured that they don't have to do certain things. Because honestly, in one of the clubs that I was managing, it was called the Global Economics Club. Great club. They're talking about the economy. And they threw one of the students up to do a presentation. He was so nervous and so unprepared that I told them at the next meeting, prep him more, tell him what needs to be done, and if he still can't do it, don't have him as a public speaker for, the club. And that really was better for him. He said, I'd rather be the treasurer. I'll be behind the scenes counting the money. All right. So balance individual and the group overall. Conflicts in the group will occur. I have a lot of conflicts in class that I have to just move people around. Even in the clubs that I actually am the club advisor on, things do come up. Again, going back to a few weeks ago, you see we're talking about diversification. We're talking about there's different people in the workplace. Respect where they're from. The group that we had, the student club, 99% of them were Latino. One individual was white, and they immediately didn't care for him. I had to make sure we talked about why we don't care, why they don't care, why we should care. We had to work out some of those conflicts. And then it turns out they just thought he didn't care for them. So it's just a matter of talking, communication. In business, same thing. When I was at the Seneca Community College this year, I worked at Miramar College, and I was the new supervisor within an office of people who've already been there for years. I really had to figure out, where do I fit in? Well, you're the supervisor. You need to fit in. And so I had to make sure that I met individuals. I met them where they were mentally, and I met them where they were physically. And I said, hey, kind of sit around, your desk and see what you do all day long, see how I can help you better do your job, or maybe change things around. That's how you actually show that you really care about the employee. So encourage ideas and trust. I would say, hey, things have been working great for you for the last 20 years. You've been here for a while. Anything you want to change? Okay. And also it helps, in my opinion, improve decision making. When you have conflicts in groups, you have to improve the decision making. Not one person should be the ultimate. That's the worst thing you could have in team building or team. We call that group think. Okay. Or team building is one person is going to run it all. You don't need a team if you're going to have everyone run the show themselves. I was in a hiring committee, and one of the members, she told the person who was going to be the supervisor of the person we're hiring, hey, just tell us which one you want because we're going to be here all day trying to figure out the best candidates. You tell us who you like. That was not appropriate. First of all, EEO dictates to us that every person coming through the door has equal employment opportunity. not hiring Joe because he's your best buddy or Sarah because she's your cousin. So those are the moments. So it improves decision making, and as a group, we're like, guys, no, let's follow the law. Let's follow the letter to of the law and make sure we hire the right candidate. So team diversity, it enhances problem solving. I totally agree with that. And some people who are the quietest in the group, just ask them to speak up. Ask them to speak up because when you speak up, then individuals can be heard, and then your idea might be the idea we get to run with. And then team diversity, it also reduces groupthink. Groupthink means it's one group of individuals from the same nationality or from the same culture or from the same belief system, and they're going to automatically do exactly what the group who are they're connected with behind the scenes would like to do. That's called groupthink. When I was at hiring committees or in hiring committees at Miramar College and other institutions, I would have, let's say, people from aviation. We're actually in there to vote to see what new faculty we're going to hire based on the need of the campus, based on the growth of the enrollment of the students. But the folks sometimes from each department comes in with their own little agenda and says, you know what, guys, we need one more person in aviation or automotive or in the nursing program. So if you vote for my guys this time, I'll vote for yours next time. Groupthink. That's kind of a extreme way of looking at it, but sometimes that's what it means. They come in with their own hidden agendas and they want to move their own, let's say, process forth, and you don't have a chance to actually say, wait, what about the folks who actually haven't had a chance to speak? Groupthink. Team diversity eliminates or reduces groupthink. Multi teams, multicultural teams. This is super, super important as well because multicultural teams, there are some challenges. Communication and the norms. What's normal? What's happening in the group? Is it normal? Should we be doing things like this? And it does also build cultural intelligence. I love that aspect. You're building cultural intelligence, which means you understand the culture. You understand how people function, how they act, how they react. That's important. So multicultural teams will also help you reduce groupthink. With that said, folks, you've just covered a lot of information with me. We're going to get into the next couple of chapters and then we're going to wrap up this semester. Thank you, folks.